So we are on week 7 of our study. We're going to be in chapters 9 and 10 tonight. But before we go too far, keeping in the theme of things,
Somebody had a birthday.
somebody had a birthday. So happy birthday, Vicki.
Made it another year.
Yeah, made it another year. That's what matters, right?
Nice.
All right, Genesis 9. By the way, I look at my screen a lot when I'm talking, so I'm keeping track of where I'm at. But just so you guys know, I'm seeing the same thing you're seeing. So I don't have a lot of notes that I didn't give you copies of. I got to ask that. Do you have a bunch of notes you don't give us? I'm like, nope, I have what you have.
I asked him that
So
first time.
in Genesis 9, it says, Then God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear of you and the terror of you will be on every animal of the earth and on every bird of the sky, on everything that crawls on the ground, and on all the fish of the sea. They are handed over to you. Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. I have given everything to you as I gave the green plant. But you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. I certainly will require your lifeblood from every animal, I will require it. And from every person, from every man as his brother, I will require the life of a person. So there's a lot of stuff here. Yes, there's a lot of stuff here. So the first thing that I highlighted at the top, and I think this is really important for us to understand something later tonight. God blessed Noah and his sons. He blessed Noah and all 3 of his sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. He blessed all of them, all right? And that's very important for later. So just remember, when I ask you, who did God bless? He blessed.
All his sons.
Yes, Noah and his sons, all right? But notice it says in verse 2, the fear of you and the terror of you will be on every animal. Have you noticed that every animal to this day, for the most part, is afraid of us? Even a grizzly bear, given a chance, will run from us versus have a confrontation with us. Now, if they fight with us, they win, okay? But they have a fear of us. And I think a big part of that is because of what I've highlighted in red. Every moving thing that is alive shall be food for you. This is the first time. So we are 9 chapters into Genesis. And we are all the way through many generations and all the way to Noah. And God finally tells us that we can eat meat. Up to this time, he had only given us the green plant. Everything was a vegetarian up until this time. But when they come out of the ark, this is the first time God has given us the right to eat meat. And then he says about the lifeblood. Basically, he's saying if an animal kills you, I will require its lifeblood. But if you kill another person, I will require yours. So that's kind of the murder aspect of it. And he's going to tell us why in the next verses here. So we'll move to the next verses. And it says, whoever sheds human blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made mankind. There he tells us. He says, you are not allowed to murder another person, otherwise I will require your life. Because that person that you murdered, no matter who it is, was made in my image, was made in the image of God. And as such, they are sacred to God. And God is not going to tolerate us killing what he has made in his image. And it says in verse 7, as for you, be fruitful and multiply. Populate the earth abundantly and multiply in it. Then God spoke to Noah and to his sons with him, saying, now behold, I myself am establishing my covenant with you, and with your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every animal of the earth with you, of all that comes out of the ark, every animal on earth. So notice that what I highlighted in red on here. Very important for later on. It's not going to be for tonight. But later on in our Genesis study, this becomes very important. He says, populate the earth abundantly and multiply in it. He says scatter. I want you to multiply and scatter on the face of the earth, and I want you to populate the entire earth. But then he gets down here and he's talking about establishing his covenant. He's establishing a covenant with them. So I thought we would pause there for just a minute and focus on, I don't know if you recall, but back in Genesis chapter 6 of our study here, God told Noah, it says, "But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives." He tells them in chapter 6 that he's going to establish a covenant, but he has not done that yet. A covenant is an agreement between God and his people, or God and us. And you notice when he does the covenants, he doesn't always ask for our approval of the covenant. Sometimes he just says, "This is the agreement I'm making with you. So this is it." He doesn't say, "What do you think? Should we negotiate it? What do you think you should offer for what I'm offering?" We always think of a covenant as an agreement between two parties where there's a back and forth. Well, with God, he sets the covenants for the most part. He establishes his covenant, and he doesn't always ask us for our input or opinion on his covenant. So there are several covenants that we've already seen. All right? So we have an Edenic covenant, which was the time when they were innocent. And we talked about this in Genesis chapter 1. God tells them, "I have given you every plant yielding seed, and every tree which has fruit yielding seed. It shall be food for you." And then in chapter 2, he says, "The Lord God commanded the man, saying, from any tree of the garden you may freely eat, but from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you should not eat. For on the day that you eat from it, you will certainly die." This is considered the Edenic covenant because it's the time that they were innocent. It's the only time in the Bible where you actually see innocence, is he said, "I have given you this seed, I have blessed you with your life, and I have blessed you with this seed. You can partake in any of the seeds, you can partake in any of the fruit, but don't eat from this tree." That was the covenant. As long as you keep my covenant not to eat of this tree, all will be good. And then we move to the Adamic covenant, which is kind of the guilt and the grace covenant. Now these are minor covenants, and some people don't look at it this way, but I look at them as covenants because it's something that God set a rule for them to follow. And in this case, this was after they had fallen. And it says to the woman, and this is verse 16, it says, "To the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your pain in childbirth. Your desire will be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. Then to Adam he said, Cursed is the ground because of you. With hard labor you shall eat from it. Both thorns and thistles it shall grow for you. By the sweat of your face." So their guilt. So he's basically saying, because you've eaten from that tree, and because you hid from me, and because you knew you had sinned, this is your punishment. But he still took grace on them when he gave them the leaves, when he switched the leaves over to skins, when he killed an animal and made clothing out of the skins. So he covered them. So these are two minor covenants. But if you think of the major covenants of the Bible, these really aren't two that usually make the list. The ones that make the list are the Noahic covenant, and I didn't put these in your notes and they're not in mine either. You have the Noahic covenant, you had the Mosaic covenant, which is Moses, giving Moses the law. You have the Abrahamic covenant, you have the Davidic covenant, and you have the New Covenant. Those are your 5 major covenants in the Bible. So, Noahic covenant, I will not flood the earth and kill everything again. That was the Noahic covenant. And we're going to talk about that one tonight. Then you have the Mosaic covenant. God says, as long as you follow the law that I have given you, so it's the Mosaic law, as long as you follow the law that I have given to you, then I will keep your nation holy and I will take you to the promised land. Then you have the Abrahamic covenant. If you will follow me, then I will make you a great nation and I will lead you to the promised land. Then you had the Davidic covenant. I'm trying not to go too fast for those who are writing things down. Am I going too fast? Okay, then you have the Davidic covenant, where he told David that he will make his kingdom everlasting, pointing to the Messiah. And then we have the new covenant, which is the one that's most important to us. The new covenant is when he sent Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ made a covenant with us saying, if you will believe and trust on me, then I will write my law in your heart, and you will be mine forever. That's the new covenant. So those are your 5 major covenants in the Bible. These are probably 2 minor covenants, but where God is setting the rules. So with all of that, questions or comments? Anyone? If no one, we'll just move on. All right, so the Noahic covenant it starts in verse 11. It says, I establish my covenant with you, and all flesh shall never again be eliminated by the waters of a flood, nor shall there again be a flood to destroy the earth. God said, this is the sign of the covenant, which I am making between me and you and every living creature that is with you, for all future generations. I have set my rainbow in the cloud, and it shall serve as a sign of a covenant between me and the earth. So anytime you see a rainbow, that is God's covenant between him and everything on the earth, that he will never flood the earth again in the purpose of destroying everything. Now that does not mean that there won't be any flooding, because if that were the case, then it's not true. But he said he would never flood the earth again to destroy everything. And his rainbow in the cloud is his sign of that covenant. But the next verses are really, really interesting on this. In verse 14, it says, it shall come about when I make a cloud appear over the earth, that the rainbow will be seen in the cloud, and I will remember my covenant, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh. And never again shall the water become a flood to destroy all flesh. Sometimes we think the rainbow's there to remind us. God says right here, when I make a cloud appear and I put a rainbow in the cloud, I will see it and I will remember it. So remember, when you look at a rainbow in the sky, just remember God sees that rainbow too. And it's kind of a neat thing to think about, that he sees the rainbow just like we do, because it's a reminder for him. It's not a reminder for us. It's a reminder for him that he'll never do it, that he will never do it again. And he says, I will remember my covenant. And then it says in 16, when the rainbow is in the cloud, then I will look at it to remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. He repeats himself right here. He basically says the same thing that he said up here in verse 15. He's saying the same thing. And I always say, when God repeats himself, it's important. And he's making this point to say, when I put a rainbow, I'm the one that gives you the rainbow when it rains. And I will see that rainbow. And when I see the rainbow, I will remember my agreement with you. I will remember what the covenant is. Because not everybody on this earth is even going to know what the covenant is. But he does. And that's what matters, is that he remembers it. And then in verse 17, and God said to Noah, this is the sign of the covenant which I have established between me and all flesh that is on the earth. Now it's kind of interesting. Rainbows. This is a view of a rainbow like we normally see over here. This is what a rainbow looks like from an airplane. So if you get the right angle from an airplane, a rainbow is actually a circle. We only see a half a circle because half a part of it's blocked for us from the earth. But if you're in an airplane, you can see a full rainbow like this when it's raining. I put this next information out there to piggyback on what Joey said last week, because what happens with the rainbows? A lot of people try to steal the rainbow. And one of those were the Greeks and the Romans. They believed that rainbows were paths to gods. And Greek goddess Iris was personified as a rainbow. So, Joey, this falls right in line with what you were talking about last week about how the Greeks, how mythology steals things from the Bible. And they're stealing the rainbow here. And look at this one. In Albanian folk beliefs, the rainbow is regarded as the belt of the goddess Prendi. And oral legend has it that anyone who jumps over the rainbow changes their sex.
Oh, goodness.
Now, you know what this tells me? It's impossible to change your sex because it's impossible to...
Jump over a rainbow.
Correct. It's impossible to jump over a rainbow. This is an interesting fact that's actually important to us. No two people see the exact same view of a rainbow, even if you're standing next to each other, because it's all based on the way the light is refracted. If you're 2 inches this way, you don't see the same thing as somebody who's 2 inches this way. So every single rainbow is unique to you. So when you're looking, it's not just a general rainbow. If you've got 50 people standing around, everyone is seeing a slightly different rainbow at the same time. But God sees it, and he knows that it's unique. So we're going to move on from rainbows. In verse 18, it says, "Now the sons of Noah who came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan." Notice how that's the only one that it points out who the son is. Ham was the father of Canaan, because the others had sons too. These 3 were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. So we had the ark, we had the flood, we had God's command to repopulate the earth, then we had God's covenant. Guess what we get next? Sin again. Sin enters in verse 20. And here's how it comes. "Then Noah began farming and planted a vineyard. He drank some of the wine and became drunk and uncovered himself inside his tent." So he was naked in his tent. "Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his 2 brothers outside. But Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it on both their shoulders and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. And their faces were turned away, so they did not see their father's nakedness." In 24, "When Noah awoke from his wine, he knew what his youngest son had done to him. So he said, 'Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants he shall be to his brothers.' He also said, 'Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth, and may he live in the tents of Shem, and may Canaan be his servant.' Noah lived 350 years after the flood, so all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died." All right. I'm going to comment on this, but I'm going to see if anybody has any questions first. Oh, questions. What's your question? Mary, do you have a question?
Well, about the nakedness.
Yes.
What was a sin?
All right.
What was it back then?
Okay. That's not told to us in the Bible. But there are a lot of Bible scholars that look at the Hebrew word that is for knew what his son had done, right here. He knew what his son had done to him. That is the same word that's used when God made the earth and made the things and made the sun, moon, and stars. It's an action word. So there are a lot of Bible scholars that think that it was a whole lot more than just looking at his father naked. But we don't know. It doesn't tell us. But this is an action word. It's not just I looked at it and I went. Now, does it mean that he looked at it and made fun of him and went and made fun of him in front of his brothers and said, "Go in there and see what Dad's doing"? I don't know. But it's an action word. But it's kind of interesting that it says when Noah awoke. He knew what his youngest son had done. So he knew. I don't know how he knew. It doesn't tell us that. But did you notice how Ham is the one that did this? Ham is his youngest son. And Ham is the one that went in, as it says right back here. Ham, where am I at? Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father. So if Ham's the one that did all of this, why is he cursing Canaan? Because Canaan is Ham's son. Now that could either be one of two things. I think it's the latter. It could be that he's showing that it's going to be a generational curse. And it's going to be the curse, the sins of the father shall visit the son kind of thing, where it's going to be a generational curse. But I think more likely is back when we first, I'm going to go back to the slide. Right here. Up at the top. God blessed Noah and his sons. Noah was not going to curse something that God had blessed previously. And I think that's where it's really coming from, is that God blessed. Because when someone gives their blessing, especially in the ancient biblical times, they did not take their blessing back. It's kind of like when Abraham blessed Jacob instead of Esau. He knew he was tricked, but he couldn't take the blessing back because he'd already given it. Because once you give your blessing is given. And I think that's what Noah's thinking here. God blessed Noah and his sons. He is not going to curse something that God blessed. So what is the next thing? We curse the son instead. And man, as we're going to see as we move on, they are definitely cursed. Because I'm going to show you some things in a minute here. But so he says, cursed be Canaan, and he's going to be the servants of his brothers. He's going to be the servant of Shem. He's going to be the servant of Shem and Japheth. And that's the way it's going to be. He's going to be the servants of his brothers. Or in this case, uncles.
Uncles, yeah.
In this case, uncles. But I do think that shows that it's going to be generational. It's going to be, and I will show you in a minute, it is a generational curse. Okay. Other comments or questions so far? Because we're going to get a lot deeper into this for our own understanding. No? Okay. So we're up to chapter 10. And it says, now these are the records of the generation of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog. I'm skipping some ahead here because I'm not listing all of the sons. From these, the people of the coastlands of the nations were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language, according to their families, into their nations. The sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Now Cush fathered Nimrod. He became a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Okay? I know we all laugh when we hear the name Nimrod, don't we? We'll see why.
Use it in the same.
We'll see why we use the word Nimrod in a minute here. Okay? So now it's talking about Ham's generations in the next chapters. So all Japheth gets is this part right here, this yellow part. That's all Japheth gets. But Ham, we're going to go on and on about. And there's a reason why we're going to go on and on about it. Okay? And it says about Ham's generation in Canaan. By the way, just for clarification, Canaanites. When you see the word Canaanites, they are not, because you think of Cain and Abel, and you think, okay, Canaanites are descendants of Cain. No, not true. Canaanites are descendants of Ham's son, Canaan. That's where the Canaanites come from. They're descendants of Canaan. So here is under Nimrod, this is what Nimrod did. And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. Do you remember I showed you the part where it said God said, populate the earth and spread around the earth? What they do in Babel? They all collected and they wouldn't leave because they spoke the same language. They all stayed together. And we're going to see that later in Genesis. So they went against God's word, the kingdom of Babel did. Then it says he went to Assyria, modern day Syria, and built Nineveh. Okay? Mizraim fathered Casluhim, from whom came the Philistines. Think about these, and we're going to get into this in a minute. I'm going to show you a schematic that makes this easier. But the Philistines come out of this line also. Canaan fathered the Amorites. So the Amorites came out of this as well. And I'm going to tell you who all these people are in a minute. And afterward, the families of the Canaanite were spread abroad. The territory of the Canaanite extended as far as Gaza and going toward Sodom and Gomorrah. See this? Noah cursed Canaan. And look, I'm going to tell you who these people are because I think it's important for our Bible study to do this. But you can see the names of these places that were built and what we know about them. But I'm going to explain that in a minute. So in verse 20 it says, these are the sons of Ham, according to their families, according to their languages, by their lands, and by their nations. This takes a lot of explanation right here to tell you what happened with Canaan, the one that Noah cursed because of Ham's sin. It's going to be important for us to understand it because it really is crucial to understanding a lot of the Bible, including Numbers. There's a lot of it's about in Numbers. There's other Bibles. There are other chapters of the Bible that are dedicated completely to Nineveh. Nahum. The book of Nahum. If you want to learn something about Nineveh, Nahum is the book that you want to read in the Bible. Because it's 3 chapters and it's all about Nineveh and the sin of Nineveh. So I kind of quoted this before, but in Exodus 34, it says, then the Lord passed in front of him and proclaimed, the Lord God, compassionate and merciful, slow to anger and abounding in faithfulness and truth, who keeps faithfulness for thousands, who forgives wrongdoing, violation of his law, and sin, yet he will by no means leave the guilty unpunished, inflicting the punishment of fathers on the children and on the grandchildren to the 3rd and 4th generations. So he takes it seriously when you have sinned against him and when you have done something that's in direct violation of his law. He takes it very seriously, especially in the Old Testament. So let's spend a little time talking about some of this. These are Cush and Mizraim and Put, and Nimrod is Cush's son. They are the sons of Ham. And you can see Nimrod was a mighty hunter who founded Babylon and Nineveh. Babylon took the people of Israel, the Jewish nation, took them captive for many, many years. And we've been studying it in Daniel in church. All the stuff that Babylon did to the Jewish people and to the Jewish nation. So Cush's offspring went against Israel. Nineveh was a horrible place. Nineveh, if you can name it as one of the worst things that somebody can do to you, that's the stuff that they did in Nineveh. There were sexual stuff. There was greed and plundering and taking people. They were violent. One thing that they did when they took prisoners from another civilization is they would cut off their ears and cut off their nose. Just to maim them permanently. But they would keep them alive. They did horrible things to people. And they did horrible, horrible stuff. Which is why God sent Jonah to Nineveh to warn them about their evil and warn them about their sin. And Jonah wouldn't go because he knew that they would repent. And he didn't want them saved because they were so horrible. And that was their reputation. And it was the biggest city in Assyria at the time. It was Nineveh. Terrible place. But modern day Assyria is Iraq, Iran, and Syria. Ethiopia and the Sudan, Nimrod was also in Ethiopia and the Sudan, so northern Africa. Mizraim founded Egypt and was the father of the Philistines. Think of this. What did Egypt do to the nation of Israel? They took them captive and took them prisoners and treated them as slaves for hundreds of years. So they went against Israel also. This is all the generations of Ham and what they did. Canaan, the Canaanites and the Amorites, we talked about the Amorites. The Amorites were the ones that God told Moses, I will deliver you to that land, because they were in Jerusalem at the time and they were in Israel. They were at that time, they were the ones who occupied Israel. And they fought against God's people and opposed them from entering the promised land. And some of the Philistines went there as well, which is why when Moses sent the spies out to look at the land to say, can we take this land? What do you think? They came back and everyone was in total fear, except two of them. Everyone was in total fear because of what they saw. They said we felt like grasshoppers in their presence because they're huge. They're warriors, and there's no way we can win this battle. So that was the Canaanites, and the Canaanites occupied Israel, Palestine, and Lebanon, is where they were at. And Put founded Libya. Good old Libya. So you can see the generations of Ham, they are very much still alive and well in the Middle East. You can see by this chart, when you look at what's happening in our country or in our world right now with this battle with Iran, look where Iran came from. Iran came from Ham, who was cursed by Noah because of the sin of Ham. So that's what all of these sons did, and that's where they're at. And I've got some maps to help us a little bit. The Canaanites were really bad because the Canaanites introduced other gods. The Canaanites introduced Dagon, which is the fish god, and Dagon was the primary Philistine god as well. And I think I gave you this slide, but just not the picture. But you can see where they were at. They were overlapping with Israel. You can see where Jericho's at and Jerusalem, and Baal was also there, and Baal was like the anti-god. Baal, the name Baal means Lord, and he was considered the god of fertility who could produce crops and children. So what happened is they interspersed, and this is, you want to make God angry? Here's how you do it. You make up some fake gods like Dagon and Baal, and then you make up all these powers that your fake gods have, and then you teach the Israel people that they should worship your gods. Yep. That's how you make God mad. You want to make God angry? Do that. This is what the Canaanites did. They introduced, this is where Jezebel came from. Jezebel introduced Baal worship and brought all of this in to the kingdom of God and interspersed, which is why Abraham was against his son marrying a Canaanite, because the Canaanites are against everything to do with God. They've gone the opposite. Okay, we were cursed by Noah, therefore we're cursed by God, so we're going to make up our own gods. And they introduced it, and they kept tainting the Jewish nation with their gods, and kept bringing them up and bringing them up and tainting them and tainting them. And if you want to anger God, that's how you do it. So I've got one more map after this to show you, but the sons of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram were Uz. Now, I'll get into this in a minute, but Uz is important. Uz, however you want to pronounce that, is important. So Arphaxad fathered Shelah. See the line we're following? Do you remember earlier in our Genesis study? This is the line of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ's line comes out of Shem. So Noah and then Shem. This is the line of Jesus Christ. Arphaxad's there, Shelah's there, Eber, Peleg. Anybody remember this name, Peleg? That's all in the line of Jesus Christ. This is the line of Jesus Christ. So it says, Arphaxad fathered Shelah, and Shelah fathered Eber. 2 sons were born to Eber. The name of the one was Peleg, the most important one to us. These are the sons of Shem according to their families, according to their languages, by their lands, and according to their nations. These are the families of the sons of Noah, according to their descendants, by their nations, and out of these nations were separated on the earth after the flood. One thing I wanted to point out back here on this. We like to think that worshiping other gods and other deities came from somewhere else. But it didn't. It came from Noah's line. It came from Ham, who sinned, and Canaan, who was cursed. And that's where we get all of the other gods. The gods of Babylon, the gods of Nineveh, the Ethiopian gods, Egyptian gods, the gods of the Philistines, which are the ones I just showed you, Dagon, the gods of the Philistines, the gods of the Amorites. This line introduced, I think, to the world a lot of other alternative gods that would be anti-gods to our God, which is really sad, because you like to think that it came from somewhere else. But I guess, how could it? Because there were only 8 people on the ark that made it. So how could it come from somewhere else? Well, we like to think that it would somehow survive some other way, but it didn't. It came from this line right here, them finding other things to worship. So this is a map, this is the table of nations based on Genesis 10, all right? And I circled these and highlighted them to try to show you where they're at. I don't know if you can see the blue as well on your screen, but I'll point it out. So Japheth is the yellow. And you can see on the yellow, Magog is up there. In Revelation, it talks about Gog, who is the leader of Magog, attacking from the north in Revelation. This is where it's going to come from in Revelation. It comes from the north of Israel. Shem is over here. I don't know if you can see it. It's this blue line right here. Okay, that is Shem. And that's where Shem's family started. So Shem, even though he is the line of Jesus Christ, started over in the Middle East. That's where they went after the ark landed. They went that way. Ham was the red. So Canaan occupied Israel. Cush occupied a lot of this area, including part of modern day Iran. And then this is Libya for Put, and over here is Egypt. So this was occupied. Now, the important part of the story, which we're going to get into, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time tonight, where I put the blue X, that's where Abraham was at. Abraham was in the land of or Uz. Okay? Abraham was told by God, get up, pack your things, and go to the land that I show you. Abraham packed up his family and packed everyone up, and that is the line per the Abrahamic covenant. I will make you a great nation. You just need to follow me. And he sent him to Israel. So he sent Abraham way back then out of that land to Israel. And we're going to see that later on in Genesis. They traveled, and then all the stuff happened to the Israelites because they weren't faithful after that. But they all went with him. But a lot of these are still, well, if you look at what's happening in our world today, I think our world is still overrun. Because if you think about it, if a lot of these people went with Abraham and followed Abraham's route, that left a vacuum over here for the family of Cush to fill in, which is exactly what happened, is the family of Cush filled in. and took, which is Ham's family, Ham's descendants. So it's important for us to understand this because I think it tells us a lot about the trials and tribulations that are over there. Because if you think about it, they don't come from, Japheth is one of the blessed sons of Noah. He's up here. Japheth is not part of all of this stuff that's happening in the Middle East. Shem has moved and is now the Jewish nation in Israel. Ham is the family that's really there. Which is why I think they're always going to be at odds with each other. Does this make sense? I know it feels a bit like a history lesson, but does it make sense? Okay, are there questions or comments?
So God told Abraham to go where the blue X is.
No, he was at the blue X.
Oh, he was at, and then he moved.
And he told him to
Okay.
leave. He said, I need you to get up and leave this land. And we're going to see this in Genesis. Get up, pack your family, and go to the land that I show you, which is here.
Okay.
He moved them from that place. Which, of course, when you move all that from that place, you have a vacuum that just continues to take over.
That makes sense now.
And really, the one that I think ultimately ended up, if you look at the family of Cush back here, Cush fathered Nimrod. Nimrod was the father of Babylon, Babel, and Babylon. Where's Babylon? South of Baghdad, Iraq. Okay? Nineveh is in, I believe it's, did I have Nineveh marked on my map?
Isn't that closer to Turkey?
I don't know if I had Nineveh on my map or not. I don't think I do. I looked it up, but I can't remember where Nineveh was actually at. But Nineveh's over there too. Can you Google, Bren?
Yep.
Where is it? Yeah, look up where Nineveh is at in the modern day. Is it Iran?
I had to be a coast.
Tigris, Mosul, northern Iraq.
Okay, that's what I thought. I thought it was Iraq. So you got Babylon out of the Cush line. You have Babylon, which is in Iraq, and you have Nineveh. That's in, you said Iraq? Iraq. Okay. And Nimrod founded the Assyrian nations. So I believe that what you're looking at now is a generation of the Cush family, which is the Ham family. That's in that entire region over there, which is why they're at odds with their brothers. And by the way, Islam did not come around until many, many years later after all of this. I think that was just another religion. So, all right, we made it. If there's not any other questions,
I have a question and it might be really dumb.
there's no such
And
thing.
there's no such thing, you know that.
Okay.
But how did Noah have that much power to curse Canaan and generations after that?
Okay. So, Noah is the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Okay? Noah was blessed by God, just like he blessed all of them later. He was found righteous in God's eyes, and God gives him that authority to have dominion over at least his family. And his son had sinned against him, which is why he cursed his son. Well, cursed his grandson, really, is what he ended up cursing. He didn't curse his son because God had already blessed him. But I believe that he cursed him because he was in the line of his son. But he, as the father of the family, and as the one who was given authority by God and found righteous in God's eyes, had the authority to curse or bless them. Because you notice he blessed the others too. If I can find it real quick. Here. He said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and may Canaan be... So he's not really blessing Shem, he's blessing the Lord. But he says, and may Canaan be his servant. So he has a right as their father, if he finds that what they have done is just unacceptable. I don't think we know all that was done. I just don't think we have a complete picture of that. All we know is this is what the Bible tells us happened up above there. Well, actually, the verses before is what the Bible tells us happened, is that he saw him naked and made a big deal out of it. That's what it basically says. But it was enough that he felt that he should curse him, and he did, and it cursed his entire generation, and generation after generation after generation, and it introduced more and more sin, more and more worship. Yeah, that's a great question, though. I don't know if that was a good answer, but it was a great question. Might have been a subpar answer.
No, you answered it. God gave him the authority to be able to curse.
Yep.
I was just wondering, I'm like, how did he
Yep.
get that? Okay.
Yep, all of his authority came from God. Others?